Senate Chair. Okay, guys, first of all, thanks for coming in. I know we don't have session till 1, but, you know, we want to, again, keep ahead of the curve. We do have this voting list, which we'll take up, assuming we have some time. In the meantime, we're going to just continue our conversation where we ended on Friday afternoon. Before we do that, I did want to give you one update. I always brag about us being the #1 committee with the most bills, so here's an update. I have always talked about the 347 Senate bills. Well, I can report to you today that we also have in our possession 195 House bills. So therefore, that is a total of 542 bills in the possession of this committee from the beginning of session, by quite a lot, #1 in the General Assembly, thus us having to come in here on a Monday last week of session to do some business. So let me just do a kind of a rehash, and I'll just kind of get the conversation going. We're going to start with Senate Bill 931. I'm just going to make a few sort of comments, and then, you know, we'll see where we are.
Excuse me for 1 second.
Oh.
I called Anna from ITO. She's on her way about the screen. So
Okay. Okay, well, as long as they can hear us, right? They can. Okay. Okay, so since, let me just start. I mean, we did have the bill as introduced. We had the hearing back a month ago. And I think since that time, we've tried at least to work with the House, with the stakeholders, to get a product in place that strikes, again, a balance, a reasonable balance that I referenced, I think, on Friday between our need for in-state generation. We've talked a lot about it. That's important, but also the interests of local government. And, you know, the legitimate interests of our farmer and ag communities. I mean, that, you know, but this is there's tension here, and we're trying to get to a balance. And as I said, I think repeatedly, the genesis of the bill from the outset was about 40% of our power come from out of state, in-state generation. This is part of the 3-bill package. Our state's regulatory environment rating is 50th in the nation. Downgraded 3 times in the last 18 months. Very hard to build in this state. So one of the goals of the bill as it came in its original form was, how do we remove some of the regulatory uncertainty and timeliness surrounding local siting and permitting and the timelines for approval to make these projects cheaper, quicker to construct, and likely the shortest term option for getting much needed electric capacity online, including projects that are right now in the PJM queue. So that was the original genesis of the bill. That said, there was pushback from MACO, from the ag community and the farmers. And so starting with MACO, I will say that almost virtually, I think I said this on Friday, virtually every one of the amendments that they put in front of us in terms of siting, setback standards for solar and battery storage, everything from grading, removal of topsoil. So at least, and I acknowledge Senator Gallian's points on Friday. So at least with some of these provisions that don't currently exist anywhere, there's at least a shot that some of the healthy soil remains on site and in place, and that the grading is minimized, and at least a better shot than currently exists with no rules or no standards that land at some point can return to active agriculture. So again, none of those standards exist today in law. Important to MACO, now MACO, as opposed to being, I would say at the hearing last month, pretty strongly opposed, is now neutral. Okay, I'll just take that. You know, that was not in the original bill. We've tried to work with MACO. Obviously, if this bill dies, all those standards go away that are in this bill, and we're back to whatever the world exists as it pertains today. As for the farming and ag communities issues, which are legitimate, and I'll just reiterate, I want to be a broken record, but right now, as we sit here today, the PSC can use our state preemption power to approve a utility scale project on any ag land anywhere in the state of Maryland. The local zoning ordinances are currently legally unenforceable that are in place in some of these states. So in an attempt to address that, we did put in this, and I'm going to say this, unprecedented I mean, literally unprecedented amendment containing a priority preservation area solar cap where the state is giving up 95% of its state preemption authority. Once that cap is hit, the state preemption no longer applies. And I'm just going to say that this, and we've looked at the entire country, there is nothing quite like this anywhere in any other state in the United States of America. This is the strictest provision, cap of sorts. No other state has any sort of maximum cap on ag land like this provision that we've put in that was not in the original bill, but it is in this bill. We can talk about the percentages. I'm just talking about the concept is unique in the nation on that front. And so, you know, and I will say the House position has been no cap, kind of like all the other states. They weren't interested in a cap. This was something that we put in on our side, or at least attempted to with a proposed amendment. And, you know, without this bill, there is no maximum. There is no cap. There is no anything. And so I'll just make the point like I just made. Without this bill, solar projects 2 megawatts or above can apply for a CPCN, circumvent any local zoning restriction. There's nothing stopping solar developers from going far, far, far above that 5% number in areas, the priority preservation areas, except for the goodwill of the discretion of the Public Service Commission. That's pretty much the only backstop. Okay, so that's where we are now. The other part of, again, from the bill as it came in and just looking through and rehashing, a lot of counties will probably never get, this is max, this is the max. A lot of counties are far below it. And the fact is, and I think we've made this point, farmers' private property rights are also important. There is no farmer in the state of Maryland that's being forced to sell or lease their land to a solar developer, or that land ultimately will be used for that. There's nothing those rights are fully preserved in this bill. I'd also point out there was some, you know, things I think we got glossed over a little bit. Although I guess maybe in that regard, there is, you know, here's a hypothetical. I'll just, you know, kind of put it out there. We have a situation where a farmer has a 150-acre parcel, want to put solar on 30 acres to help finance the work of their farming operation, the other 120 acres. Maybe they want to do it. This bill allows that farmer to make a personal choice about their financial situation without local governments essentially making that decision for them, which is, I mean, just getting back on personal property rights. The other thing, and I think Senator Gallion, we had a conversation about it on the Friday session, if you have an easement on your land, if you have some existing or future contract easements, if a contract easement prohibits solar on the land, that contract right overrides this bill. So if you have contracted and there's an easement and it says no solar, this bill does not override that because that's contract law, that you cannot infringe or impair. So I just have to put that out there back on the rights of farmers. Yeah? Well, I don't know. Say, clarify a little bit.
So thank you. That was one of the questions I had. I think I asked a little about the, you know, like in Harford County, they have their own program. Some counties do, some don't. So those easements are intact, whether it be a county easement or a state easement such as Mouth then?
Devin, I mean, I believe that if it's contract easement, says no solar, the bill doesn't touch that, can't touch that.
If there is an existing contractual right, irrespective of where it comes from, then that contractual right is superseded. It supersedes the bill. The bill specifically says that it doesn't impair any existing contract right. At least I think it does. Yes, it does. So if there is a contract for an easement, then that contract is upheld.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Just kind of a few, then back on the percentage topic of, you know, we had this back and forth about 2 and 5 and that type of thing. Just kind of again, just to put it out there, a lot of the talk about the numbers that we were talking about, 2%, they were tied to, I think, you know, it was mentioned that Director Pinsky talked about the clean energy, the goals within the RPS, what would be needed to reach the in-state, the carve-out, the solar carve-out that's in the bill that was actually, I was the sponsor of. So in 2019, We revised the RPS to do a carve-out. 14.5% had to come from some solar, okay? But here is the thing, and I think we didn't really flush this out. That RPS program is all about using ratepayer money to subsidize and incentivize more renewable energy in the state. That has really nothing to do, candidly, with resource adequacy problem. That program was not designed, and we've got MEA here in Landon. That program was not designed to address what kind of demand needs we have as a state moving forward. That's a completely separate issue. So tying the 2%, which it seemed to be the conversation, had to go with how many acres do we need to meet the carve-out within the renewable portfolio standard to incentivize new green energy and all that, is a separate conversation, which is the point of these three package of bills, which is how do we generate in-state generation capacity to address the growing demand for energy in the state moving forward, whether it's data centers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, so those are separate issues. And so I think part of the 5%, beyond the fact that we're trying to get to a place where we can pass something that will actually pass out of the House of Delegates, and I don't know that anything less than the 5% number is going to work. But putting that aside, you need some amount of energy to take into account some of the unknown. And growing demand, as things move forward, we're going to know a little more about our demand needs for the next 5 or 10 years, and these numbers can be modified. But right now, on the front end, we're putting in something that's unprecedented like this. We're erring on the side of having the potential for some additional growth in terms of meeting the demands for energy of our state. And so it's multifaceted. It's taking all that into account to come to a number that I think can get out of the General Assembly. But it should not be confused or conflated with the goals for the renewable portfolio standard, which have a completely different design and reason for existence. And so I have to just put that out there. On the, and then I guess I'll make this point. Again, I'll reiterate, if the bill dies, you got no standards, you're back to 100% state preemption authority. If the bill dies, we're back to that point of the PSC can approve a solar array anywhere on any ag community, 100% of the priority preservation areas of our state. So that's sort of big picture. Now, here's one other stakeholder that's super important. It's this committee, okay? And so, we had the conversation on Friday afternoon, and I'm just going to, issues were raised by Senator Augustine Kagan about the auto-enrollment provisions of the bill for community solar. Senator Washington raised some issues. I think there's an amendment that's been drafted. I know Senator Augustine, we may not be ready for prime time, but he is conceptually will be able to explain that. The topic of agrivoltaics did come up, I think, from Senator Hester, and Senator Hester also brought up the topic of the use of state land for solar moving forward. And all that said, there may be some other amendments, but that's kind of, I think, how we left it on Friday afternoon. And with all that said, let's continue the conversation today, and we're going to start with Senator Gallion.
So well, thank you for answering the easement question, but I wanted to just dig in a little further on that because I had kind of a follow-up. Because so say some of these easements were done like in the 90s, I would assume those easement contracts were probably silent on solar, even though it was never the intention to allow something like that, because the thought was, it's to have the ground where you can actually farm it for crop production or open space or what. So how does this relate to those easements that were done 20 or 30 years ago, but are silent on solar? So would they be allowed or would they not be allowed?
That's a very good question, and I'm not sure I know the answer to it. I believe that it depends on the contract, Senator Gallion. So if the contract puts prohibitions on the land, then that prohibition for construction on the land, then that solar is construction. So any kind of easement that prohibits construction is going to not allow solar or houses to be built. And so I think what you all talked about on Friday was equating the construction of solar to the construction, the building of houses or subdividing property. And if one is prohibited, the other is prohibited.
And actually, April has some information about the MALF program.
Yeah, just because I've dealt with MALF quite a bit, and the specific topic has come up in the past. So a lot of, particularly the older, I think even now, those agricultural easements generally prohibit commercial activities other than farmers. So any sort of, I'm forgetting what the exact term is, but that has consistently been interpreted over time to preclude any sort of commercial scale energy generation of any type, whether that be wind, solar, et cetera. So it's a more general term, but it has always been interpreted to disallow that stuff, and nothing, it sounds like, in this bill would change that.
Okay. And then one thing, just a kind of a comment on the percentages that we had a lot of talk about, and you mentioned, you know, with the RPS solar carve out and stuff. So it's great that you brought in Mako and got all their issues resolved, and they can come to the table now and say we're neutral. It's my understanding that if you could get the percentage of 2%, you'd also be able to do that with the agricultural community. So it's a little disheartening to me to, okay, it's great that we're listening to Mako. I agree with them on most issues, but, you know, the ag industry in the state's the #1 industry in the state of Maryland. Their people are also at the table and talking, you know, they talk to all of us. And it sounds to me like 2% would get them right there on board with us, or at least no opposition. So it's great we're taking Mako's input and working on that, but, you know, I think we should do the same for the ag sector. And quite frankly, it's, you know, if you look at some of these districts, you know, you look at the map that we looked at the other day, you know, my area, the Eastern Shore, that's where you got a lot of that green on there. And, you know, some folks in those areas of the state already feel underrepresented. And when they come to the table and say 2% would work, we'd make that work. And we're going to say, oh, no, well, the House might not like 5%, or this person might not like. I think in the Senate, we need to offer the best product for our policies going forward and for the state. And the 2%, I believe, was like 41,000 acres. And we're talking, we heard from Senator Hester, I think, last week, like it was maybe 15 or 20,000 acres is what you would actually need. I just think that's a realistic goal that could get people like me on this bill. I'd be happy to vote for this bill at 2% all the way through the third reader, quite frankly, because I think that is where you actually brought everybody to the table on it and listened to everybody's concerns. But I still will hold with, even with the discussion of the RPS stuff, 5% is still too high.
Okay, anybody else? And again, I fully understand at some point some folks are going to have to go right on the bill, and we're trying to obviously work with the other chamber. I will make this note just in terms of the percentages. Like I'm looking right now, the total acreage in Harford County, 66,530 total acres of priority preservation. If you take 5%, that's 3,300 acres. I mean, I think just from a statewide perspective, but I hear you. I understand that argument. It's been made. Obviously, again, some of those percentages are tied to the RPS goals. Some are not taking into account our future demand for energy needs. And obviously, this is a bit of a balancing act. Again, if the bill dies, we're back to 100%, no cap. And that's just the legal reality of our state at the present time. Sure.
So in our budget that we're going to talk about today, you'll see where $25 million that's supposed to be in a dedicated fund for ag land preservation, rural legacy, and Project Open Space is being stripped out and going to the general fund. So what kind of messages does that send to the state when we're saying, well, yeah, we're gonna have more solar, but we're not gonna leave this dedicated funding in that fund? I mean, we're sending a clear message here by this stuff, folks. So it's kind of playing. Look at both sides of this, okay? We have goals for preservation that we pushed back a little bit. What's this going to do to those kind of goals? Just, that's a rhetorical question.
No,
but
it's, look, I.
important to get all that information out there.
You've made the point. I guess, my only, again, I don't want to be broken record on this, but we're doing something that no other state in the United States has put on the table, giving up 95% of our state authority here to protect ag and priority preservation areas. I mean, I just don't want that to be understated. There's no other state that's doing what this committee is putting on the table here, albeit at a percentage somewhat higher than what you're proposing, much less than what the solar developer, they would love, if not 100%, 2020, we're much closer to where the farmers and where you're pushing than where the original discussion started, from 100 to 20 to whatever. So again, as part of the conversation and balancing act, that's kind of where we're at. Any other kind of big picture stuff? Otherwise, I think we need to probably take some action up or down on the bill and then take up some of the amendments that have been proposed. So does anyone want to move at least the amendments that are in the reprint?
Yeah, I'll do that, and I'll also will just say that while this is a challenging bill, we got to get back to the fact that we have struggled to get our renewables sited and up and running, and we all are trying to achieve that goal. And that's just what's really central. We got to get back to that, and all things that we do have compromises, and that's just the way that it works. So I'll definitely move move the amendments.
The amendments in the reprint, and we're going to separately take up other amendments.
Yeah, and
after
the
that.
reprint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a second on just the amendments in the reprint? Okay, second from Senator Hester. Okay, discussion. Let's do a roll call on with this one, because I know there's differences of opinion on portions of this bill for sure. Yes, Senator Simonetti.
With these amendments, does it put it to 5%, or was that in the?
Yeah, the amendments create, again, first in the nation, 5% solar cap. It was not in the original bill, but this was inserted in response to some of the concerns raised by the ag communities and the farmers. But I understand many would like it lower, and I get that.
Offer a separate amendment for 2 if we'd like to, or do we have to amend it?
Well, I think we need
Got
to,
this one's on the floor, then we start talking.
after we do this, then we'll entertain any other amendments. Okay, let's do a roll call, Lamore, on just the amendments that are in the reprint here.
All right, Senator Kagan? Aye. Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Augustine?
Yes.
Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion?
Yes.
Senator Gallion, yes. Senator Watson? Yes. Senator Watson, yes. Senator Attar? Yes. Senator Attar, yes. Senator Brooks?
Yes.
Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carozza?
Yes.
Senator Carozza, yes. Senator Hester? Yes. Senator Hester, yes. Senator Simonetti? Senator Simonetti, yes. Senator Feldman?
Yes, so those amendments carry unanimously. And now let's move to some additional amendments. Devin, would you want to just put them out there for discussion, and the sponsor can articulate some more as to, what they do, and just
So
take each one up individually?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first amendment that I will describe is amendment number 463826/1 on your desk. This amendment would exempt agrivoltaics from the siting provisions of the bill.
Senator Hester, would you want to add some additional information about the amendment?
No, I think, I do have a question. I think if you're using agrivoltaics, you obviously don't want to have all the barbed wire fence and stuff, because your tractors will have trouble getting on and off the land, right? So I think the amendment makes sense. My question was about the previous amendment.
It does cover the previous amendment as well. The apiaries and the pollinator habitat piece from the previous amendment, it
So
has
you
that in
you
it.
just got a whole page worth into 4 lines? That's awesome. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, would you like to move that amendment? Okay, is there a second on the Hester amendment? Senator Augustine, discussion just on this one amendment. Okay, all in favor of this amendment from Senator Hester, raise your hand. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up.
The second amendment that I will describe is Amendment 593024/1. This amendment's offered by Senator Hester, and it would require the Maryland Energy Administration Solar Technical Assistance Program to analyze state-owned land suitable for solar development and assist with the creation of a database for that information.
Okay, Senator Hester.
Thank you, Chair. This was one that I mentioned that wasn't drafted exactly right. I'm still working with DNR to make sure that it is. I had a call into MEA also. So conceptually, it's correct, but technically I need to fix it.
Okay, subject to some technical modifications before we go to the floor. Any questions to Senator Hester on this particular language on this specific amendment? We've got Vice Chair Kagan.
When Senator Hester, question for you. When we talked about this on Friday, I asked who would have access, would it be publicly accessible, who's responsible for compiling and maintaining it? Can you just speak
So
to it for a bit?
that's the essence of my question out to DNR, is there is an existing DG Plus tool which is publicly available. This information is not yet, but in 2023, beginning of 2024, we worked to get all the GIS layers from all the agencies. So I think it's on the back end, but it's not publicly there yet. So my intent is to have it publicly available. Does that answer the question?
It does. And that would be incorporated into this amendment as you're tweaking it?
Sure.
Just,
I mean, I assume
should it
that,
be?
I
Is there any
assume
reason
that,
it shouldn't be?
I assume that it would be publicly available. There's nothing that says that this would be private.
So as you,
So as I
As you tweak
redraft
it.
it, we'll make sure that it's publicly available.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Senator Hester. Thank you, Mr.
We move, I apologize, Senator Hester, did you move this amendment? Conceptual amendment? I would like to move it. Subject to some technical fixes? Okay. Senator Hester moves this amendment, second from Vice Chair Kagan. Discussion? All in favor of the second Hester amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Devin, what's next?
The next amendment that I will describe is Amendment 423024/1. This is the Washington Hester Amendment from that you discussed on Friday. And this amendment would clarify that an owner of a solar energy generating station shall comply with all state laws relating to stormwater, erosion and sediment control, site stabilization, impacts on soil density and compaction, and impacts on ground cover under the panels. I will note, though, that it is my belief that this is already covered in the bill. However, this amendment would make it very crystal clear that these items would be subject to the solar energy generating station owner.
Okay, so Senator Washington did raise this issue, was hoping to get some super clear clarification, so this reflects that. Okay, any discussion on this belts and suspenders clarification amendment from Senator Hester on behalf of the issue that Senator Washington raised on Friday? Okay, is there a motion from Senator Hester? Okay, Senator Hester moves this amendment. Is there a second from Senator Augustine? All in favor of this Hester amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? This motion carries unanimously. Let's next move to, we have a fresh,
Hot off the press amendment.
Off the press Augustine amendment, and just presented to us. And so, Senator Augustine, well, let's go with you, Devin, and then Senator Augustine can weigh in as well.
So this amendment that you've just been handed is Amendment 943724/1. What this amendment would do would eliminate the auto-enrollment provisions in the bill and clarify that the community solar program is an opt-in program.
Senator Augustine.
I'm definitely going to want to move the amendment. I just went through, you all heard me ask a significant number of questions about the auto enrollment and the issues. I know Senator Kagan also had some things it's just not ready. This is also quite complicated as it relates to all the municipalities and how they may or may not be able to handle it. And so I just think that it just makes sense for us to pull it out of this bill, and I'll move the amendment.
Okay, there's a motion from Senator Augustine on this particular amendment dealing with the auto enrollment provisions. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, second from Vice Chair Kagan. Question from Vice Chair Kagan on this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Augustine, thank you for your work on this, because I do think it was not quite ready for prime time. Can you just, we just got this, so I'm up to page 7 of 13. Can you just tell us exactly where the opt-in part is? I just want to make sure that it's accessible to all people who, yeah.
So opt-in is current law, is in current law, and so what this amendment does is it strikes the opt-out provisions in the auto enrollment piece that was in the original bill. It does add on page 12 of 13 of the amendment that a subscriber organization may include a county or municipal corporation. That was the genesis of the auto enrollment provision, was to allow counties and municipalities to be able to participate in the community solar program. So current law allows for an individual to opt in to a county's or a municipality's community solar program. By striking the provisions that deal with auto enrollment in the bill, you've struck out opt-out and you've reverted back to current law, which is opt-in.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Devin.
Yes, Senator Simoneau.
Just because it's a big amendment. I hear it's striking the opt-out, which I understand striking, but it's 13 pages. Can you just give me like a 3-bullet, here's what this?
So it does exactly what I just described. The reason why it's 13 pages is because the amendment was drafted off of the reprint that you have before you. So it contains all of the amendments that you already just adopted when you adopted the reprint of the bill. So it's just simply drafting to that reprint and wasn't drafted like the other amendments where they were drafted individually.
Okay, so this isn't 13 pages of changes.
No, Senator.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, additional questions on the Augustine amendment, and you moved it? And the second was Vice Chair Kagan. Okay, discussion, all in favor of removing opt-out, moving to opt-in, raise your hand. Okay, all opposed to that? Are you weighing in on? Okay, amendment carries unanimously. Okay,
So, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
the final amendment from Senator Kagan, 823725,
No longer
that /1 is irrelevant from the amendment you just took.
Because we just did this.
Okay, so we have.
Not proffered.
And now we're going to go to Senator Gallion on any aspect of this bill as.
Sure. So when we're, first start with a minor thing. When we were going through it Friday, where it had, like, I think it referenced invasive weeds, we talked about adding the word noxious in there. Just for clarification, and so there's no ambiguity there. Is that?
Yeah, okay, why don't you move that, yeah, just conceptually move that. Okay, Senator Gallion, Senator Augustine seconds. All in favor of this, of what Senator Gallion just,
His noxious amendment.
noxious amendment? Raise your hand, all opposed? Okay,
Obnoxious.
that motion carries unanimously.
And then the second one would just be to make that change it from a 5% to 2%.
Okay, on that one, is there obviously going to do a roll call on that one. And there's a second from Senator Simoneau. Obviously, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, I'm going to have to resist that. But that said, let's take a roll call on the Gallion amendment to move it from 5 to 2.
Senator Kagan?
No.
Senator Kagan, no. Senator Augustine? No. Senator Augustine, no. Senator Gallion?
Yes.
Senator Gallion, yes. Senator Watson? No. Senator Watson, no. Senator Attar? No. Senator Attar, no. Senator Brooks? No. Senator Brooks, no. Senator Carozza?
Yes.
Senator Carozza, yes. Senator Hester? No. Senator Hester, no. Senator Simoneau? Yes. Senator Simoneau, yes. Senator Feldman?
Okay, no, that motion fails 3 to 7. And we've got Senator Augustine moving the bill as amended. Second, yeah, on the amendment or on the bill?
I'm still kind of hung up on the agrivoltaics amendment.
okay.
I'm really sorry. I know I offered it, but it had shifted slightly between what I saw on Friday and today.
Okay. Well, we could do, okay, well, what would you propose?
Senator, I will clarify that that amendment does what it's supposed to do. And if there are any additions that I can make sure that since we're doing other conforming amendments as well, I will triple check to make sure it does what I think it does.
Okay,
Thank you, Devin.
So Senator Hester, you'll work with
I'll work with Devin on that.
Devin, to make sure
Yes.
it's as intended?
Yes.
Okay, so with that, we had a motion from Senator Augustine, a second from Vice Chair Kagan, and we'll do a roll call on this bill, on Senate Bill 931 as amended.
All right, Senator Kagan?
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Augustine? Yes. Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion? No. Senator Gallion, no. Senator Watson? Yes. Senator Watson, yes. Senator Brooks? I'm sorry, Senator Attar? Senator Attar, yes. Senator Brooks? Yes. Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carozza? No. Senator Carozza, no. Senator Hester? Senator Hester, yes. Senator Salmonere?
Yeah, and explain my vote. I appreciate my farmer, but I think we need these improvements overall, so I'm going to be supporting yes.
And Senator Feldman?
Okay, yes, bill carries 8-2, and that concludes that particular piece of legislation. Now, we do have a voting list. Again, the committee with 540-some bills needs to continue with our mojo here. And so I'm going to let's turn to, does everybody have voting list number 26 in front of them? Okay, well, I don't know why they don't want to hear about food resiliency. Is that what everybody, should I interpret? Okay, April, let's start with you on Delegate Cherkoutian's bill, House Bill 9, and we'll just go through this list and see where we are.
House Bill 9, Public Safety, Food System Resiliency Council Definitions and Reports. This bill alters existing responsibilities of the Food System Resiliency Council and repeals outdated one-time reporting requirements, including a previously submitted one-time strategic plan. Under the bill, the council must develop equity and sustainability policy recommendations to increase the long-term resiliency of the food system that, 1, address and eliminate limited food options and food scarcity that exist in healthy food priority areas, 2, reduce wasted food as defined under the bill, and 3, address the production and procurement of food. The bill also requires the council to include in its annual report appropriate policy and legislative changes.
Okay, we're going to take questions on House Bill 9. Okay, we've got Senator Augustine moving favorable on House Bill 9. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from the Vice Chair. Okay, questions? Okay, we got, no. Yes, question, Vice Chair Kagan?
We had talked about on page 4, lines 1 through 3, specifically adding nonprofits. That would be my preference. I got feedback that they are working with nonprofits. Don't know whether the committee, we have time. It would be an easy concurrence. I kind of like it, but I don't want to mess with the bill. Any thoughts?
Okay, Senator Hester, you want to weigh in on what's on the table here?
I mean, I serve on the committee, and I think that there are a lot of nonprofits on there. But I also think that the chair can add them at any, I mean, in the statute, they can add them at any time. I don't know if April, if that's true. Can the chair of the FSRC add folks?
So Senator Kagan is referring specifically to the area that requires the council to develop equity and sustainability policy recommendations to increase the long-term resiliency of the food system, including increasing the procurement of local food through school. Right now, the language says through schools, institutions of higher education, and other institutions. Senator Kagan is proposing
like
to
to
add and nonprofits.
Nonprofits, just the one word. Line 2.
Page 4, line 2.
Yeah, Senator Hester?
I don't feel strongly either way.
Okay, I'm going to move that we include the word nonprofits on line 2 after higher education.
Okay, is there a second? Sure, second. Senator Augustine. Okay, any discussion on this additional few words?
One word.
I mean, one word?
One word.
Okay, all in favor of the
Or nonprofit
Kagan
organizations, whatever
verbal,
your preference. Okay.
verbal amendment? Raise your hand. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, with that, got House Bill 9 as amended by the Kagan amendment on the table. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Vice Chair moves. Senator Augustine second. All in favor, House Bill 9 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, the motion carries unanimously. April, House Bill 338.
House Bill 338, State Buildings and State Highways, Collection and Disposal of Yard Waste. This bill generally prohibits state employees or contractors from disposing of yard waste collected on the grounds of a state building or a state highway in a single-use plastic container. All such yard waste must be collected in a container that, 1, will not be discarded with the yard waste, or 2, is a compostable paper bag. In addition, the bill generally requires that such yard waste be disposed of at 1, an organics recycling facility in the state, 2, a natural wood waste recycling facility in the state, or 3, a state facility with on-site capacity to create mulch or soil amendments. However, this requirement applies only if the yard waste is collected within a 30-mile radius of one of these facilities and the facility has the capacity and willingness to accept all of the yard waste. The bill does not apply to a person who is disposing of noxious weeds as designated by the Maryland Department of Agriculture or invasive species.
Okay, question. We've got a motion from Senator Augustine on House Bill 338. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from the Vice Chair. Discussion. Okay, all in favor, House Bill 338? Raise your hand. Okay, all opposed? We've got Carosa, Simonaire, and Gallion in the red, so a 7-3 vote. Motion carries. Okay, House Bill 344, this is one we did take up and held on Friday in April. Could you refresh everybody's memory about
House
this
Bill
one?
344, Maryland Environmental Service, Membership of Board of Directors, alterations. This is the cross-file of Senate Bill 315, which passed the Senate unanimously. The bill alters the composition of the Board of Directors of the Maryland Environmental Service by replacing the state treasurer with the Secretary of Planning. Additionally, you may recall, it was discussed last week, the House amended the bill to add 1 member of the House of Delegates and 1 member of the Senate as non-voting members of the board.
Okay, and I think Senator Augustine, you had raised some issues, if you want to maybe weigh in on this one at this point.
Yeah. I just have had, concerns about sort of how we have our performance on these things. Now, with that being said, this particular entity has a history that, it just makes sense for us to have some eyes and ears on it. So upon reflection of that, I just will move the bill as it's arrived to us.
Okay, we had a motion from Senator Augustine, second from Senator Brooks. Yeah, questions. We'll start with Senator Watson.
I just don't recall because I've never kept count, but when we do these types of boards and what have you, is it common practice that members of the House of Delegates and the Senate are non-voting members?
I think this came up on Friday.
This came up on Friday, but because this is an executive, it's essentially an executive agency, so there is a separation of powers issue where we cannot have legislators as voting members.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this one? Again, we're on.
Amendment to put Augustine on this commission?
No. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. There is a cross-file. Well, first, let's take up House Bill 344. We had a motion, a second on the table.
It's a Brooks and Kagan.
Okay. All in favor, House Bill 344, raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries. So we have to do something with 315?
No, so 315 is already in the House. I think they've
they'll
actually
amend
already
it.
amended it, and they're sending it
So when that
back
comes
our way.
back to us, we'll probably just concur. Okay. Let's go to Delegate Guyton, House Bill 452.
House Bill 452, Outdoor Lighting, Guidance, and Use of State Funds. This bill alters an existing prohibition against state funds being used to install or replace a permanent outdoor luminaire that does not meet specified criteria on the grounds of a state building or facility by 1, including state parks and trails in the prohibition, and 2, exempting lighting used to illuminate the field of play at a sports facility. It also specifies that except for a luminaire installed or replaced by the Maryland Department of Transportation, A luminaire installed or replaced using state funds must have a correlated light temperature that is less than or equal to 3,000 Kelvin, subject to existing waiver procedures. Finally, the bill requires, 1, the Maryland Building Council to update or develop related guidance as specified, and 2, MDOT to conduct a review of its highway lighting practices as specified. The bill applies only prospectively and does not affect the purchase of any outdoor lighting fixture for a project for which the design phase has been completed before the effective date of any published guidance required by the bill.
Okay, questions for April? Yes, Senator Hester.
I might have the same question as my neighbor, but I was just curious about the MACO letter, which cites potential visibility and safety issues. Was that addressed at all, April?
Believe so. They did not testify in the Senate.
There's
Right, I
We're
know
looking at the
they,
same
a
thing.
letter of information on the House bill.
Again, if anybody needs any additional information, we can always hold these bills at this point. Senator Carrozza, did you have a similar question or something separate?
right, and so the bill as it came over does not apply to athletic fields or, at least not to athletic fields.
Back to you, Senator Hester, if your light's on. Hey, guys. Why don't we just hold it? We can just move on, get the information you need, and when we meet again to vote, this will be on the list, and you can find out whatever you need to find out. Okay, let's go to House Bill 494. Delegate Allen.
House Bill 494, Recreational Equality for Service Members Act. This bill is the cross-file of Senate Bill 282, Senator Simonero's bill, which passed the committee unanimously. This bill generally establishes uniform definitions related to the military in the general provisions, natural resources, and state government articles of the Maryland Code. The bill differs slightly from the Senate cross-file by including a few provisions of the natural resources article that were missed in the Senate bill.
Senator Simonero, what's your pleasure on this one?
I want to go with the House bill.
Okay, the Senate sponsor would like to go with the House version. Any additional questions for either Senator Simonero or April? Okay, want to move? Okay, Senator Simonero moves favorable on House Bill 494.
Second.
Second from Senator Augustine. All in favor of House Bill 494, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously. And next go to House Bill 562, Stacy.
House Bill 562, Baltimore County Political Party Central Committee Elections. This bill reduces from 4 to 3 the number of members elected to the Baltimore County Republican Party Central Committee from each councilmanic district in Baltimore County. The bill also alters provisions that define the membership of the Baltimore County Democratic Party Central Committee based on legislative districts. There are no amendments, and a local letter has been received. This is a cross-file to Senate Bill 352, but they're in different postures. If you recall, the Senate bill just dealt with the Republican Party, and Delegate Ebersol said that they noticed that the Democratic part of it had not been updated, so that is what it does.
Okay, we've got a motion favorable from Vice Chair Kagan. Senator Brooks from Baltimore County is a second. Is there any discussion on this Baltimore County delegation bill? Seeing none, all in favor of House Bill 562, raise your hand. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. April, back to you on House Bill 716, and these bills do not have cross files, so.
House Bill 716, Housing and Community Development Statewide Rental Assistance Voucher Program Eligibility Alterations. This departmental bill makes changes to the Department of Housing and Community Development's administration of the statewide rental assistance voucher program. It includes DHCD in the definition of a public housing agency and authorizes a public housing agency to administer the state program in accordance with its local administrative plan, while authorizing the department to use a project-based structure for up to 100% of its authorized voucher units to administer the state program, including in political subdivisions without a local administrator under the Federal Housing Choice Voucher Program. Bill makes further changes to the eligibility criteria, inspection frequency, and state assistance to local public housing agencies under the state program.
Okay, questions for April? Okay, is there a motion on this departmental bill from anybody? Okay, Senator Brooks moves favorable, Senator Augustine is a second. And again, questions? Okay, all in favor, House Bill 716, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, opposed will be Gallion, Carrozza, and Simon Ayer. So the bill passes. Did you want to vote? We just voted. You want to be on?
I just went to get my notes on this. Was it
Oh.
717? No.
716.
716. Okay. Favorable.
Okay, so you're a yes. So the bill carries 7-3 with the 3 dissenting votes from Gallion, Carrozza, and Simon Ayer. Next up, House Bill 719.
House Bill 719, Natural Resources State Boat Act alterations. This departmental bill from the Department of Natural Resources alters definitions, regulatory requirements, Waterway Improvement Fund funding limits, and fees under the State Boat Act. Notably, the bill repeals special requirements for boating regulations, instead would have them be subject to the general requirements of the Administrative Procedure Act, increases the maximum manufacturer and dealer's license fee that may be set by the department from $25 to $50, increases various vessel titling, numbering, and use fees, and establishes an optional non-motorized vessel decal, authorizes the department to establish or alter speed limits by public notice under certain circumstances, and increases maximum project costs that may be funded under the Waterway Improvement Fund, including the total maximum that can be spent on small projects, those under $5,000, without legislative approval.
Okay, questions for April on House Bill 719? Favorable from Senator Augustine. Is there a second from Senator Brooks? Discussion. Okay, all in favor of House Bill 719, raise your hand. Okay, all opposed? Okay, the bill carries 7-3 with the red votes coming from Gallion, Carrozza, and Simon Ayer. Next, move to House Bill 720, April.
House Bill 720, Natural Resources Repeal of Summers Cove Marina Commission and Improvement Fund and Alteration of Operations. This departmental bill from the Department of Natural Resources repeals provisions that establish and govern the Summers Cove Marina Commission and the Summers Cove Marina Improvement Fund, and in place of those provisions, establishes authority and responsibility of the Secretary of Natural Resources relating to the marina, transferring management of the marina from the commission to the department. The remaining balance from the improvement fund is transferred to the Natural Resources Property Maintenance Fund in DNR, which also receives ongoing revenue from the marina and may be used by DNR for managing, operating, maintaining, and developing the marina. The bill also establishes the Summers Cove Marina Advisory Commission in DNR. There's no opposition at the bill hearing. It's passed the E&T committee unanimously.
Okay, House Bill 720 has been moved favorable by Senator Augustine, second from Senator Carrozza. House Bill 720, raise your hand. All in favor? All opposed? House Bill 720 carries unanimously. Next up, April, House Bill 747.
House Bill 747, Environment, On-Site Wastewater Systems, Requirements for Inspection and Pumping Services, an Extension of Sunset and Implementation Dates. This bill requires a landlord of property that is served by an on-site wastewater system, that is a septic system, by July 1st, 2028, and before each new tenant occupies the property thereafter, to ensure that the septic system has been inspected and pumped. Beginning July 1st, 2028, the bill also requires a contract for the sale of real property with a septic system to include a provision requiring, as a condition of the sale, that the purchaser ensure that the system has been inspected and pumped out. The bill does not limit a mortgage company or financial institution from requiring a septic system inspection as part of a contract for the sale or transfer of real property. The bill also delays requirements related to the licensing of certain on-site wastewater service providers by 2 years until July 1st, 2027.
Okay, questions for April on House Bill 747? Yes, we'll start with Senator Gallion, then we'll go to Senator Hester.
I'm trying to remember, was this the bill that there was some concern brought up about when it came, like, when you're going to close, sometimes there's negotiations, and this is normally involved in that, and so it's kind of happening without the, is that the correct bill that they brought up?
Might be.
740. So it requires a inspection if you're sold that property to a developer, right? Intend to. So if someone were to buy a property from a tax sale or bank forfeiture, how and who would be responsible for a PTI in that situation?
So it's, the bill always puts the requirement with the purchaser.
So there's no waiver for foreclosures?
I don't believe so.
Okay, let's get questions. And again, like the other stuff, we need some answers. We can hold the bill. Yes, Senator Hester.
This was the one that I had some questions on too. I think it's a good bill. I had contemplated an amendment, but now I don't have it with me. Are we voting again soon? Can we hold it just for a?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's just hold this
Well,
one
we've got
first.
multiple sessions. I don't know, yeah. So let's hold House Bill 747. And we're going to next move to you, Stacy, House Bill 774.
Okay. House Bill 774, Higher Education Hunger-Free Campus Grant Program Alterations. This bill increases the amount that the governor must include for the Hunger-Free Campus Grant Program in the annual budget bill to $225,000 rather than $150,000 beginning in fiscal year 2027. Further, the bill expands the eligibility for Hunger-Free Campus designation by the Maryland Higher Education Commission to private institutions of higher education. However, these private institutions are prohibited from being eligible to receive grant funding under the Hunger-Free Campus Grant Program. There is one amendment offered by Senator Washington on page 3 of your packet, and this would conform the bill to Senate Bill 789 as passed by this committee and the Senate. These are not designated cross files, but they will be exactly the same bill, and essentially the amendment just strikes the increased mandatory appropriation beginning in fiscal year 2027.
Okay, questions for Stacy on House Bill 774, which Senator Washington is moving to match the Senate 789.
So you said it's fairly close, though.
Oh, they just weren't designated cross files.
But they pretty much are.
But they pretty much are.
Okay.
So
well,
as amended, it would be exactly the same as the Senate bill.
So I'll support Senator Washington's amendment, just to put it out there.
Okay.
I'll move it.
Okay, we've got a motion to move the Washington amendment to 774, second from Senator Gallion. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? That amendment carries.
I'll move that bill as amended.
Okay, Senator Augustine moves House Bill 774 as amended. And is there a second from Senator Brooks? Okay, all in favor of 774 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed? That carries unanimously. Oh, I'm sorry, one dissenting vote from Senator Simon Aaron? Okay, let's strike that. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Okay, the motion carries 7-3 with dissenting votes from Gallion.
No, not Gallion.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I really, we're on day 83 here. Okay,
47-0.
we're on Senate Bill,
No.
House Bill 774,
House Bill 774.
8 to 2 to 1.
789, correct?
Senate Bill 789. that's
As
what
amended,
Stacey
it would
said.
be,
Well, we
it would
didn't,
conform
we're
to
just,
that, yeah.
we're just moving right now,
House
the
bill.
vote is on the House bill.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I'm
So-
saying, as amended, it would
Right.
conform to Senate Bill 789 as passed by this committee and the Senate.
Okay, three times is a charm. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay. All opposed? Okay, that motion, 8-2.
Okay.
Well, she's not here. 8-2.
No extension.
What, do we have to do something on the 789? Do we have to take action, Senate Bill?
No, that's already over
It's already
in
in
the
this
House.
House side, okay. Okay, guys, let's move to page 2 of the voting list. And Stacy, start with House Bill 879 from Delegate Smith.
House Bill 879, Task Force to Improve Attendance and Reduce Chronic Absenteeism in Schools. This bill establishes the Task Force to Improve Attendance and Reduce Chronic Absenteeism in Schools. The Maryland State Department of Education must provide staff support. Task Force members may not receive compensation but are entitled to expense reimbursement as provided in the state budget. By December 31, 25, the task force must submit a report detailing its findings and recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly, and MSDE must update regulations relating to student attendance to incorporate the task force recommendations. By June 30th, 26, MSD must distribute a toolkit for school leaders on identifying and preventing chronic absenteeism and provide guidance to each local school system on effective prevention strategies. The bill takes effect July 1, 25 and terminates on December 31st, 26. There is one amendment in your packet that on page 4 that is being offered by Delegate Taveras, thank you, Senator Augustine. This amendment would add Delegate Taveras as a co-sponsor and add to the duties of the task force by requiring the task force to establish categories that identify reasons for chronic absenteeism by students from schools and collect data for each corresponding category for each local school system.
Yeah, okay, Senator.
I'll move the amendment.
Well, okay, we got a motion on the amendment, second from Vice Chair. Senator Watson on the bill, or on the amendment and the bill, for that matter.
On the bill. So I just see this as being a redundant bill because as I've been browsing through the blueprint for education, we've updated the wraparound services to include chronic absenteeism. Unless Stacy tells me something different, the AIB and MSDE is already going to attack this, put in metrics to try to determine all the things that this bill is intended to do.
Well, the definition for wraparound services applies only to community schools. This is a much broader provision that would apply statewide to every school.
Got it.
While we're pondering that, can we just take up the Taveras amendment to be a co-sponsor, and then we could come back to the and the additional language from the delegate. Okay, let's take the Taveras. Is there a motion?
He moved.
And a second. All in favor of that particular amendment, raise your hand. All opposed. So now back to the bill as amended. We had Senator Watson weighing in. We had Stacy with a response. Additional questions for Stacy on this topic of redundancy and overlap?
To remove the redundancy, can this bill exclude community schools?
Can do anything.
Well, this is true.
Just need language.
I just, everybody has a stake in trying to improve our school system. And we're putting a lot of effort and attention on moving a blueprint forward that attacks all of these things within the financial constraints. And these one-offs that seek to do the right thing, but I think in unintended fashion will impede or put additional pressures on the school system trying to implement all these things. And so if it's clear that within the blueprint, the community schools are going to be looking at wraparound services to include the reduction of chronic absenteeism, then they don't need to again do it with this bill if this bill is going to be countywide. So for me to support this bill, I would add an amendment to exclude community schools.
Stacy, could you give the committee a little guidance on this before we?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure how you would do that.
Okay.
I mean, the duties of the committee as defined are to collect and analyze data regarding chronic absenteeism, identify local and national strategies and best practices to address it. identify, differentiate, and comprehensive responses that prioritize prevention and intervention, set a statewide goal for the reduction in chronic absenteeism, develop and distribute guidance, and then make recommendations on a single definition of chronic absenteeism. So I'm not really sure how you would do that. I mean, I think the definition of wraparound services in that provision means that they can spend money given in the two community schools for that particular purpose. So they could implement the strategies developed by or suggested by the task force. But I'm just not sure how you would exempt them from
So
the-
let me ask it different. I just don't want to.
And one option also here, Sarah Watson, we could just hold it and just kind of figure it out. But let's talk it through.
Depending on this question, this answer, I just don't want to do any harm to what the blueprint is going to do. So if this bill is in place and the blueprint is going to do what it needs to do, specific and unique to community schools, would there be any harm to the way the blueprint is set out to manage its issues?
I think it's actually complementary in the sense that this task force, if you decide to pass it, could come up with good strategies and best practices, and those can be incorporated and used by community schools to alleviate some of the absenteeism that they're seeing at schools. That was my understanding of how the bill was supposed to function.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, we did have a motion from Sarah Augustine, a second from the Vice Chair on this piece of legislation, House Bill 879 as amended. Any further questions for Stacy? Okay, seeing none. All in favor, House Bill 879 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that motion carries unanimously. We next have House Bill 983, which is a cross-file, Sarah Augustine, Senate Bill 685. Vice Chair, did you
Yeah.
I just had a question, and you might want to hold it, but just put it on the table so we know kind of what the
Yeah.
issue is here for you.
So the amendment, I'm reading the reprint. I do have some questions. I'd love to meet with Senator Augustine and just, yeah, so.
Do you want me to describe
Maybe just
it?
put it out there.
If we can just, yeah.
You want me to
if we can just
describe
hold
the
it till
bill?
our next voting session.
Can we at least get a description of it? There's some significant changes that have occurred, so.
Do you want to start with describing the amendment then?
Yeah, I mean.
Well, if we describe the House bill, which significantly rewrote the bill.
Yeah.
And then Senator Augustine has amendments to both the House version and
Just get it
the
out
Senate vision to conform it to the House version as amended. So if you want to discuss it, I mean, I can describe it and then,
We can hold it, but I think maybe since we have time here, I think maybe it'd be good to just maybe at least get out there so we know what issues need to be at least addressed. I think that'd probably be helpful.
So in the reprint, I mean, in no particular, I mean, again, I haven't even finished the reprint because we just got this morning. So I'm all about language access, and I commend the senator and the delegates for working on this. For instance, on page 7 of the packet, line 22, voting materials include.
Can I do a description before you do that?
Sure,
Is that
you just
okay?
asked me to go first. I'm happy to defer to you, Senator.
Actually, I didn't ask that. I asked if Stacy could go through it and explain it, and then we could get to it. If
Go
that's
for
okay?
it. Totally,
Okay,
of course.
let's just, go through it, and if we need to hold it, we can hold it. So Stacy, and then why don't you just tell us what the bill is about?
House Bill 983, Election Law, Local Boards of Elections, Language Assistance Program. This bill establishes a language assistance program in which the State Board of Elections must identify, based on specified criteria, counties in which there is a significant need for language assistance for voters in the county in a language or languages other than English, and local boards of elections in counties the State Board of Elections has identified must provide specified language assistance services, including the option for a voter to communicate with election judges at an early voting center or election day polling place through a translator available by video conference technology. The State Board of Elections must publish and maintain on its website a list of the local boards that must provide language assistance under the program by January 1, 2026. On page 5 of your packet is an amendment from Senator Augustine. This amendment clarifies various provisions in the bill, including the definition of voting materials, the date by which the state board must determine which counties need language assistance for the voters, requires the state administrator to notify local boards and the chief financial officer of the county if a county is required to participate in the program. The state board provides oversight of and not assistance for the program. Signage posted in polling places under the program must be state board approved, and the state board may approve any additional language assistance services provided by local boards.
Mr. Augustine, you want
I
to
just
add
want to
some?
say that I've worked on this with Executive Director Demarinis, I think is. Administrator. I was trying to get the language right. To limit the fiscal impact and to also to put it in a place where, you know, they can do much of the execution. We worked through that, worked through the language to get it to a place where he's comfortable while still helping us to, you know, provide language access and ensure people are able to vote, which is what this piece of legislation is all about. So just wanted to put that out as sort of this, and this is, while we're talking about the House bill, a little later on, there is the Senate bill, which is I am the sponsor of. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Kagan, do you want to still consult with, you know?
With the sponsor of the bill.
Okay, let's just, we'll take this up right in the first when we meet again, and that would be House Bill 983, and then the Augustine Cross file, which is down the list, Senate Bill 685. Okay, April, let's go back to you and House Bill 1193.
House Bill 1193, Housing Development Permits, Local Reporting Requirements, Maryland Housing Data Transparency Act. This bill was on our voting list at the last voting session. The bill requires each county that meets the definition under the land use article of a local jurisdiction with at least 150,000 residents to report to the Maryland Department of Planning quarterly beginning January 1st, 2027, specified information relating to buildings or development permits that include a residential housing component.
Okay, questions for, yes, we've got Senator Augustine with questions for April.
It's not questions for April. I just want to thank the sponsor who sent an email out to kind of walk through help me with the purpose for the bill and sort of like how it all works. So at this point, I just would like to move the bill.
Senator Augustine moving House Bill 1193. Is there a second from Senator Brooks? Discussion. All in favor of, yes, Senator Carrozza.
Can you share a little bit? I'm kind of scrambling to find out what this bill does.
Sure. The sponsor emailed us actually, where she walked through the fact that right now, this information is not readily available, and what this would do is, although each of the counties have this information, it's not all accessible, but it's just like a press of the button from them, but it would provide for clarity at the Department of Planning, the State Department of Planning, and visibility to all of the items that were there as it relates to this housing data transparency. So she actually sent us all an email that really kind of walked through that, and also the fact that by changing it, the changes that were made relieve some of the concerns that there were before, because it no longer applies to like the municipalities, it just applies to the counties, and that the counties are able to do this right now. Yep.
Okay, additional questions? Okay, so we had a motion from Senator Augustine, a second from Senator Brooks. All in favor, House Bill 1193, raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. If we go down to the bottom, this is a cross file of Senator Heddleman, Senate Bill 944. And I think the appropriate motion would be to move to conform Senator Heddleman's 944.
House Bill 1193.
Okay, so that motion's on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a second from Senator Attar. Okay, all in favor of conforming Senate Bill 944 to House Bill 1193 that we just passed, raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. Let's go, Stacy, to Delegate Patterson, House Bill 1204.
House Bill 1204, Public and Non-Public Schools Student Elopement Notice and Reporting Requirement, ACES Law. This bill requires that each time a student attempts or accomplishes an elopement, leaving school campus without the permission of a responsible school staff member, the school must notify the student's parent or guardian on the same day as the incident. At least annually, a school or student's individualized education program, or IEP team, must review and address wandering or elopement behavior in updating the student's IEP or behavioral intervention plan. The bill applies to public schools, the Maryland School for the Blind, Maryland School for the Deaf, and non-public schools. A school must develop policies and procedures to implement the bill's provisions. There are no amendments.
Okay, is there any questions for Stacy? Motions? Move favorable, Senator Simonera, second from Senator Kagan. Okay, all in favor of this particular motion on House Bill 1204, raise your hand. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, April, House Bill 1277.
House Bill 1277, Department of Natural Resources, Savage River Lodge, Hotel Rental Surcharge. This bill requires the Department of Natural Resources to, 1, beginning in fiscal 2027, assess and collect an 8% hotel rental surcharge on rental units on the property of the Savage River Lodge, and 2, remit the proceeds from the surcharge to the comptroller for distribution to Garrett County. From the part of the surcharge collected that is attributable to a rate of 6%, Garrett County must designate a portion for the promotion of the county, and the part of the surcharge collected that is attributable to the rate greater than 6% must be distributed to the general fund of the county.
Okay, questions for April? House Bill 1277. Is there a motion? Senator Hester moves on House Bill 1277. Is there a second? Senator Watson?
Discussion.
Discussion. Senator Augustine?
Yeah, this is, I mean, we have in here a letter of opposition from the Department of Natural Resources for this piece of legislation. And further, you know, the idea that the state has already had to purchase this property. So this is our investment now. And we still have responsibility for it as well. So the idea that we would put a tax on top of it that would then go to the county, I just can't even possibly understand how we would do that. And like I said, DNR is already in opposition, and I just, yeah.
Okay, so with that, you know, we've got DNR in the room. Are you able to come up and just, you know, so we can drill a little bit deeper here and as to DNR's opposition? So, yeah, let's, you heard Senator Augustine's commentary on your position. Why don't you give us a little more?
Good morning. Thank you. Emily Wilson with Maryland Department of Natural Resources. We did oppose the bill. We did buy this property that was the donut hole, otherwise inside of a state forest. We are terming it a state park, and we're trying to make it more open and more accessible and more affordable, most importantly, for all of the residents of the state and beyond. And so we were concerned about having to charge an additional 8% that would go then back to the county.
Okay, Senator Watson?
But it was the county's to begin with. The state took it, right? It's not a taking. Oh, my bad. Yeah. It used to belong to the county.
Hey, Ron, get a little closer to the mic.
It used to belong to the county, right?
No, sir. It was privately owned, and we purchased it from a willing seller.
Oh, okay. So all the proceeds from it when it was privately owned went to that private owner, none to the county?
They did pay, I believe they did charge some sort of accommodation tax when it was privately owned, but it's now state-owned. And the state, when we own property across the state, we don't directly pay property taxes, but we do have what's called a payment in lieu of taxes provision. So we are making up for the fact that property taxes directly aren't being paid, but we're paying an accommodation for that.
That goes to the county?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go Senator Carrozza, Senator Hester.
I was trying to go back and recall the delegate's testimony where I think he referenced that there's actually kind of a wait and that the interest is strong. And I also saw that the Maryland Tourism Coalition was supporting this as well. So it just, I understand, I think the concern you're raising, but according to the delegate, there's actually a demand and wait list to get into this.
Well, we just settled on the property, I believe, in December of last year, and we are still working to put together the plan for how we're going to let all of the rooms, the yurts and the cabins and so forth. So we're still working on finishing up that plan to get this open and available for public access.
Okay, Senator Hester, then we'll go back to Senator Augustine. Senator Hester.
I have two questions. The first is, it was optional for the state to buy it, like we chose to buy it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the second question is, so the county's asking for an 8% tax on top of this, on top of what you already do. You're going to pay a 6% on what you make overall, right, to the county as part of the, is that true?
That's how I read the bill, yes. 6 of that 8% would go to the county.
Okay, that's
for-
not my question. Then my question is, I mean, it was, I think you said that there is a payment in lieu that you pay the county. My question is, what is the quantity of that payment compared to the quantity that they got previously? Like, what are those two values? That's my question.
That's something I would need to research and get back to you. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay, Senator Augustine.
I thought that the property was in distress, and so it wasn't functioning anyway. It was part of the reason why the state stepped in and purchased it. Is that not the case?
No, it's actually in really decent shape. It's a lovely piece of property, and the cabins and the yurts, I can personally attest, they're very comfortable.
Okay, and so, but then why did the state buy it?
Because it was, for several reasons. I wish I had a map with me, but it is literally a donut hole within Savage River State Forest. So they had an easement over the forest land to get to this 42 acres that includes the cabins and the yurts and a conference center. So it was important for us from a property management standpoint to own it, but also the demands, I believe perhaps to Senator Carrozza's point, the demands from the public for accommodations like cabins and yurts versus tent camping, let's say, is increasing. It's ever increasing. So to be able to add that to our portfolio, to add those kinds of accommodations for the public was also important to us.
And the people who would be paying this additional tax, this significant tax increase, would be the visitors from around the state, like from Prince George's County and other places. This would be an additional tax on those people, correct?
That's how I read the bill,
And
yes.
any other one else, that would be, this is an additional tax that otherwise wouldn't be that additional tax that would be being put onto the visitors and stuff like that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're channeling Senator Kramer for a minute there. I was really.
So-
Okay, Senator Watson.
This just doesn't sound like the testimony we heard. This area was being sold at a very high premium to it's my understanding. It was one of the go-to places where a lot of folks were kind of priced out of going to a place of this magnitude. And yes, the county got a portion of it. When the property owner decided to sell it, you know, it's not a tax on, in my opinion, Prince George's County or anybody who wants to go. They actually would be paying less than if the private owner still owned it. Is that a fair statement?
Well, our plan certainly is to bring nightly rates down, so it is more accessible and affordable for the general public, including families, yes. So this was sort of a higher-end destination for people, yes.
So my point is it would have cost anyone outside of the area more had they wanted to rent that area out under the prior owner than it will be under the state's care, right?
Right, but our intent in bringing these prices down is to attract folks who may not have gone to this property considering their previous rates.
I understand, but there was also the suggestion that there was always a queue for folks who wanted to go. There was always a waiting list, right?
I can't speak to how the private management, I don't know if they had the waiting list.
All right, thanks.
And Senator Hester, what was the information you were looking for DNR, just so I can?
I think it'd be super helpful if we could get but like, given what the conversation's been, both the price that was paid previously per night and then the anticipated price per night. But then for the county's benefit, like what it was getting paid, maybe on a season, based on the tax rate when it was private, based on what they would get under your payment in lieu of the new situation. Because it seems like we could have a win-win where people go, they pay less, but the county's not losing a ton of money. But I think if we just had the data, like we could make an educated decision.
Position to get for us?
I can find that out, but let me clarify, because there are two different issues being discussed. So the payment in lieu of taxes relates to property taxes. This 8% is like an accommodation tax. That's separate from payment in lieu of taxes for property taxes.
But I think if we could have both numbers, that would be helpful compared to what they got previously, just so that we could see if they're trying, how it shakes out for the county's perspective. But then from the people's perspective, I think it's really important that we understand what the prices used to be and if they're going down. And even with, if you put the tax on, would they still be like $150 less than they were previously? That'd be great.
Right. The accommodation tax of 8% had been being paid by the private property owners. So we're not looking to do that. Our preference would be to not charge that. So I just want to make that very clear on that point. Plus, it's not something that we charge on any other of our accommodations across the state.
Okay, let's get some, we got Vice Chair Kagan, Senator Gallion, and then back to Senator, Senator Augustine.
Thank you. Senator Hester, so according to glamping.com, the cabins were going for $235 a night and yurts were $255 a night. So I don't know who thinks that's high or low or medium or whatever. When you click on book now, the site is broken. So I don't know if, so that's all part of the transition. In terms of the Senate cross-file bill, we voted unanimously to allow it to be withdrawn.
Right.
Well,
hasn't-
okay, let me clarify, because Senator McKay
Senator McKay had that bill.
specifically did not withdraw it because he didn't want to do the bill. He said just from an efficiency standpoint, he didn't think we needed to have two bills and two hearings and all that. So that's what he told me.
Okay.
So I wouldn't read too much.
Obviously, that can't be told on, on a
Well, I
voting
get,
list.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I'm just,
okay.
that's what
All
he.
right, those are
I don't
what
want that
was
to weigh
able
in too much to this.
And they look pretty, by the way.
They're very
Okay,
nice.
we're going to go Senator Gallion. Okay. Senator Augustine, anything?
Just again, I mean, in keeping with what was just said, I mean, I just can't believe we're contemplating raising a tax rate on this thing when we're not doing that. And as she mentioned, in other sort of similarly situated properties and everything else, is we're struggling right now with this whole thing where we are having to do it. We got to do it in some other places. Like, I can't imagine why we would do that here versus trying to make this place as accessible as possible and in keeping with what is happening across the state and supporting the position of DNR, which is to oppose the bill.
Okay, Senator Hester, why don't you have the last word on this? And then what I think we're going to do is we're going to hold this, get us some more information, and we'll let that percolate for a little bit here. And Senator Hester, why don't you?
I may be seeing this differently than the President Pro Tem. It sounds to me like there was an 8% tax being charged. And so we're not raising it. The question is whether you want to maintain the current tax rate at a point when our municipalities are also struggling, or our counties are also struggling. So I don't see it at all as raising a tax. I see it as holding the status quo, while reducing the prices of the rooms from $250 to $150.
Okay, I'll modify. Okay, we're going to go back and. Okay, the bill, we're going to hold the bill, we're going to get some more information, then we're going to have a further discussion, and we'll probably end up taking a vote up or down, okay? So let's go Delegate Jones.
Thank you.
Stacy, thank you for helping us out here. Stacy on House Bill 1344.
House Bill 1344, Department of General Services, Assessment of State-Owned Facilities, Child Care Centers. This bill requires the Department of General Services to conduct an assessment of all facilities owned by the state and operated by agencies supported by DGS to evaluate whether a facility or a portion of a facility is suitable to lease to a child care center. By December 1, 2026, DGS must report to the General Assembly on the results of the assessment, including an inventory of all facilities owned by the state and a description of whether each facility is suitable and available to lease to a child care center. DGS must also publish the report on its website. The bill takes effect July 1, 2025 and terminates June 30th, 2027. There is one amendment in your packet on page 10 offered by the chair. This conforms the reporting requirement regarding the facilities to the requirements of the assessment.
Reporting of the facilities.
So
You said
in
the last
the
sentence.
main provision of the bill, it said they had to conduct an assessment of all facilities owned by the state and operated by the agencies supported by DGS. Whereas the report was they had to report on inventory of all facilities owned by the state, which was much larger number. So if they're not assessing it, we want to make sure that they're reporting on what they're assessing.
Thank you.
Okay, just on the amendment.
Move the amendment.
Okay, Vice Chair Kagan moves the amendment, second from Senator Watson. All in favor of that one amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, amendment carries. We now have House Bill 1344 as amended in front of us. Discussion? Motions? Okay, Senator Watson moves favorable, second from Senator Brooks. All in favor, House Bill 1344 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed? Looks like that motion carries unanimously. Let's, before we adjourn here, let's go back. We held one bill back here, a delegate guidance bill, House Bill 452. Senator Hester, we got some additional information. I can't remember who asked for the whole, but we were waiting some. You have some additional information on that 452. Just put it out there for the committee.
Wondering if the issue with Mako was addressed, and they said that they were fine with the bill. So I would move the bill favorable.
Back to House Bill 452. If you can go back to 452, which we held, and we were unclear about Mako. We now have some clarification on that. And Senator Hester has now moved favorable on 452. Any questions just for Senator Hester, or for that matter for April, on that legislation before we, is there a second? Let's put it there.
Second.
Okay, second from Senator Brooks. Okay, discussion on House Bill 452. Okay, all in favor, House Bill 452, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, we have 2 dissenting votes. Bill carries 8-2 with 2 dissenting votes, for red votes from Senators Gallion and Carrozza. So again, that bill carries 8-2. And folks, by my count, let me just see here, 14, 15. Okay, we passed 16 bills, and that completes our work on for this morning. And I will see everybody at 1 o'clock on the floor. Okay.